we first took a tour to the Unter den Linden last year, and it was well worth the trip because Unter den Linden, the opera house, the new state opera, has been refurbished. The acoustics are amazing. They've raised the roof, literally raised the roof of the house by 5 meters to change the acoustics. And Daniel Barenboim, the first thing he says is, I've got a house with the best acoustics in the world, better even than Bayreuth. The other thing being in Berlin, you're in the middle of this German culture that developed with a vengeance in the 19th century, that tried to find its bearings in the past. Because don't forget, Germany used to be it wasn't Germany. There was no such place as Germany with a capital G. They were all individual states. So it had an identity problem right through the 19th century. So there is this search in the past somewhere for some kind of fundamental point. There are 2 things that I think the Germans did. One, they were very interested in the foundation of Rome. And secondly, they were also interested in their own medieval literature, which was being revived in the 19th century, things like the Nibelungenlied. So the German culture suddenly had its ancient Greece, if you see what I mean, in this medieval culture. And all of these things were really developed intellectually and practically in Berlin, with the Humboldt brothers, for example, a lot of academics working in Berlin, discovering all of these poems, literature from Germany's past. A lot of it was Scandinavian literature, incidentally, but they claimed it for themselves. Led to great controversy later. That doesn't matter. The point is, it was a search for identity. And in some ways, the Meistersingers is about that, because it is obviously meant to be, at some level, a nationalist opera, because it praises the revival of German art. The prize song, which is at the center of the opera, this is how to write a brilliant song. That's what the opera is about, that appeals both to the experts and to the public. And it goes... got a lovely Italianate sound, and you can hear it already in the overture in E major. So this Italianate lyricism goes right through the Meistersingers. And this is supposed to be an opera about German nationalism. How can you actually call this kind of thing only German? Yeah, that kind of thing, the chorale at the beginning. Begins with a kind of German chorale. Okay, that's German. Lots of biblical things about it. It's about John the Baptist. It's about baptism, except that in this piece it isn't a person who gets baptized, it's the great work of art, written in a kind of Italian mode. So is this a European work, or is it a purely German work? If you just listen to the music, then you have to ask yourself those kind of questions. And on this tour, we're going to go around the German National Museum and look at some of the sources of the Meistersingers from the Renaissance, the whole role of Hans Sachs, who was a famous poet, why he's so central to the piece, why art seems to play such a big role in the piece. What function does art have in the 19th century in Germany? What does it have? What role does it have now in Germany? Is it just elitist? Wagner's idea was, yes, it is elitist. I'm a serious composer in the spirit of Bach, but I also want to appeal to a lot of people who don't necessarily read music. The music has this allure, and that contradicts completely the public conversation we're having about him. He's meant to be elitist, he's meant to be a Nazi, he's meant to be this. Well, if all that is true, why are people going in hordes to see these fascinating pieces that are actually about modern life and about the lack of religion, the lack of something to believe in, the role of technology, the individual versus nature? Because in something unlike the Meistersingers, it's also nature that takes the upper hand. And the big scene in the second act with Hans Sachs, where he's breathing in the smell of the elderflower, the Holunder, something that was meant to flower on Midsummer's Day and also arouse you sexually. There's a whole tradition of this. And lo and behold, we find Hans Sachs dreaming of his sexual longings. So this isn't just a work about German nationalism in the crude sense of the word. It's wonderfully deep psychologically. The relationships between the characters have a lot to do with the way humans react with each other in competitive circumstances and in difficult circumstances as well, when they feel desire for the person they know they can't have, which is what happens to Hans Sachs in the third act of the opera.